Hey, it's Rick, aka Concrete River. So I've been dreading doing this video for a while. I'm still on Flavor Art Flavors, and I'm still doing some of the weirder titled ones. So the ones today are going to be a little bit more odd than the previous batch, if that's at all possible. And I'd like to also take this opportunity to state that these videos are kind of just like a first test. So I'll go over some second opinions. I'll go over notes for the manufacturer, different testing percentages and stuff when I get the full on Reddit reviews written out. But this is more just about you watching a chunky white guy vape on camera. So, um, the flavors for today, we have Monsoon, we have Storm, we have Ozone, and we have Reggae Night, all by flavourart. All these are going to be tested at 2.5%. They've all been steeped about 8 days by now, I want to say. Something like that. So there's some tobaccos in this batch, and they could theoretically benefit from a little bit more of a steeping, which I'll try to note in my full-on reviews. But figure it's been a week. We'll go ahead and give them a shot, see what direction they're heading at the very least. So starting out, we have the Monsoon. So flavourart's description of this is kind of hilariously bellicose, to put it lightly. So they talk about tobacco, and then they talk about some sort of wind moving through fruit gardens in the rainforest. And then at the very end, they call this a polyhedral celebration of something or other fucking thing. So I basically have no idea what to expect with this. This 2.5%, we'll see how it vapes. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm not getting that heavy dark tobacco note that they put up there up front. It feels like there is something in there that might be able to pass for tobacco, but it kind of feels like a tobacco in the way that like TPA's RY4 double feels like a tobacco, where it's just kind of a little bit dirty and harsh as opposed to like a distinct like tobacco leaf flavor. I definitely feel the tobacco more in the mouth feel, than actually tasting like a distinct tobacco flavor. So polyhedral might be going a little bit overboard. But there's definitely some sort of fruit mix in here. So you start off with that kind of tobacco mouthfeel and that kind of dryness. And then you get this big, like, ball of sort of sweet, and it's especially sweet for flavourart, like sweet candied fruit. It feels like maybe there's an orange in here. I'm maybe getting a little bit of cherry too. It almost feels like there's like a date flavor or like a fig flavor, like something a little bit darker and sweeter. There's a little bit of, and I could be drastically like misusing this term, but there's like a little bit of a phenolic note. So you know that Play-Doh taste that you get from like Cap's glazed donut? It's somewhere in that kind of family of flavors. It doesn't really stand out as much here as it does with a bakery, but it feels like that fruit has like a little bit of that phenolic note to it. It's like it's not like ridiculously offensive here like it is in glazed donut, but the overall fruit mix, it feels like it maybe needs to go ahead and just embrace the fact that it's a dark fruit mix and sort of drop the tobacco description, because it feels almost like a fruit cake fruit, you know, where they're candied and you've got like darker syrupy flavors around it. There's a little bit of a floral note on the back end, but it's not really perfumey. It's actually pretty pleasant. It seems to be working with whatever tobacco thing they have going on here. I fully came into this expecting to hate it because I had sort of test vaped this one a little bit. The more I vape it, the more I actually kind of like it. I think it's a pretty interesting fruit mix, and I like some of the darker, spicier notes that I'm getting out of that fruit. I don't think that there's a lot of tobacco in here, and I think that it's a flavor that would definitely benefit from the addition of some tobacco. I almost want to say something a little bit spicier and dirtier in terms of tobacco. Not really like a big, mellow, smooth tobacco flavor, but maybe something like Inaware's Black for Pipe or something. So you can go ahead and sort of play that against that sort of dark, sweet fruit there. Or, you know, if you're not into the tobacco thing, it seems like it'd be a pretty good solo flavor. So pleasantly surprised with that one. I have to apologize. I'm sweating balls. It's hot in here, so you're going to have to get used to a whole bunch of wiping down. Next on the agenda, we have Storm. So the description for Storm by FlavorArt's really brief. They're just talking about a dark, spicy tobacco. And that's pretty much what I'm getting, is dark tobacco right off the bat. It feels a little bit thinner. It doesn't feel like a pipe tobacco. It reminds me a lot of like flavourart's Arabian tobacco, or even like their Turkish tobacco, that kind of... I don't know exactly what kind of spice note that is, but I know that it shows up in like a lot of the Camel cigarette ripoff flavors, stuff like that. For only having steeped a week, this is actually a really solid tobacco flavor. I do get some fruit out of this. And again, it's a very dark, sort of nondescript fruit. It doesn't really cross the line into like the raisiny smell of like a fresh pack of cigarettes, but it's sort of along those lines. It's like more of like a pipe tobacco smell. Yeah, it tastes more like the pipe tobacco smell, but it kind of vapes more like a cigarette flavor. And there's just a little bit of ash in here too, which is actually not overwhelming. It seems to be pretty fairly well done. It feels spicy, but it doesn't really taste spicy. I'm not going to say it's green, but it has like almost kind of like a dried herbs kind of hit to it. It doesn't really have like, when they say spicy, you know, I'm usually talking about like cinnamon or nutmeg or whatever. Those are the ones that people keep on going to. There might be just a little bit of clove in here, or something that feels like a clove, but especially towards the end of it, just right on the finish, there's like this weird kind of herbal flavor. It's almost like I want to say like an Italian parsley. And this feels really full for a FlavorArt single flavor, even a FlavorArt blend. It's a lot bigger and sweeter of a flavor than I'm used to from them. I can see using this as a single flavor. I think the tobacco level here, for me at least personally, Seems like it's actually pretty good at 2.5%. That fruit underneath is really sweet. So I'm not sure that I'd want to add much to it. You might be able to get away with like adding a fruit that's more top notes, like something like Inawera cherry, and sort of playing that base fruitiness for something like a fig. That herbal note's a little bit distracting. I'm not going to say it's bad, or it just feels a little bit out of place up against that like deeper fruit sweetness. But yeah, I mean, that's not a bad single flavor tobacco with that fruity edge. They don't mention it, but pretty sure there's a pretty heavy hit of like a sweet fruit in there. If the next flavor tastes like peaches, it's only my fault. I haven't gone grocery shopping in forever. So I apologize for that ahead of time. So next we have Ozone. And Ozone I've actually had for quite a while. I've tried to do a couple different tests of it and just always ended up kind of stumped when I tried testing it. But I went ahead and mixed up another tester of it for this video, just trying to clear the deck on all of the weird-ass flavourart flavors that I have. This mixed at 2.5%. So I've seen this mostly used as an additive, so it's going to be a little bit weird vaping it solo, but... So at 2.5%, there's almost like a caramel sweetness to this. It's weird. It tastes, again, I hate to bring up this touchstone, but if you're barely familiar with tobacco flavors, it's actually a good point of comparison. This tastes a lot like the tobacco note from TPA's RY4 Double. Underneath all that caramel, there's technically some sort of tobacco in there, and this has that kind of like warm, dry, sort of grassy, fresh hay kind of tobacco note to it. flavourart suggests using it with tobaccos as an enhancer, and I could totally and completely see that. I think it'd be a good way to make stuff more like TPA's RY4 Double. Yeah, there's definitely a sort of wet hay note to this that doesn't quite like cross over into like that sort of like warm, wet, rotting hay that you smell, but it's more just like freshly cut hay. It feels a little drier than something like a freshly cut grass flavor. At lower percentages, actually, this ends up tasting a lot like the air right after it rains or right before it rains. That kind of hot, muggy, sort of vaguely vegetal smell. This flavor at like 1% is pretty much a dead ringer for that. And I've actually had a sample of this steeping for something like 6 months. I tried that again, and it does a lot of the same kind of stuff. So in terms of using this, like I said, I think it's tobacco additive. I think I'd go ahead and add a little bit more body, some of that fresh hay character, maybe freshen up some of your tobaccos a little bit. I wouldn't use it high enough that you start running into the sweetness, but it's not really necessarily a bad thing to have your tobacco flavor sweetened up a little bit. The throat hit, when I say that it's like a little dry, it's the throat hit from TPA RY4 Double. It's not really harsh so much as it's just a little bit dry and scratchy. It's an interesting flavor, more than anything else. And I think if you need this in your life, you probably already have it in there. I don't think I'm going to sell anybody on buying flavourart Ozone, but it's definitely not bad. It's interesting. Yeah, caramel and wet hay. Um, so last on the agenda, we have Reggae Night by flavourart, which, in addition to being sort of questionably named, I've heard a lot about. Apparently, it's a pine flavor, it's a juniper flavor. People that go into it expecting it to taste like marijuana in some way, shape, or form are fairly disappointed. That's not really a taste I need in my life when I'm vaping. So, not too worried about that, but I am excited for this one. Give this a shot. Okay, so right off the bat, I definitely get a lot of juniper out of that. That's actually nice. That might be a better juniper note than flavourart gin's juniper note, or at least they're sharing a lot of the same components, and there's less going on here to sort of distract from the juniper. I'm also getting. I'm not getting much in the way of pine. I am getting like fresh cut grass, as opposed to, I guess, the hay from the Ozone. This actually just kind of has that you just mowed the lawn taste to it. It also smells quite a bit like you're slicing up, like not the fancy English cucumbers that come like individually packaged, but you know, the big old gnarly ones that are like 3 for $1 and have the thick ass skin on them. It kind of tastes like it smells when you're slicing up those kind of cucumbers. Like by itself, it kind of tastes like the smell from a crudité platter, which is really interesting. And it plays nicely with that juniper there. Yeah, I'm not getting like that rosiny pine flavor that you get from like Yakima hops, or even that sort of like warm, more like camphor-y, like rosemary that you get from like Inaware shisha rosemary. It's a very clean, sort of crisp green flavor, which is nice. Actually, there aren't too many of those in vaping. Um, I think you're gonna have to figure out some uses for this because nothing's really jumping out at me right now. I think it'd be an excellent like gin booster in cocktail recipes. That juniper note really works well there, and I think that cucumber and those grass notes are gonna actually work really well with a gin base. I can see matching it with some brighter fruits. I'd stay away from like the really dark syrupy stuff, but I can see playing that off against like strawberry. You know how they do like strawberry basil. Doing it like that, or like raspberries, or something a little bit brighter. I'd probably stay away from like the tropicals though. So yeah, bright red berries seems like it'd be a pretty good counterpoint. I don't want this flavor anywhere near a cream or a bakery, but you may be weirder than I am, which would be an accomplishment. But in terms of the way the flavor's actually built, it's actually really good. It's not bitter, but it's also not sweet. It just feels pretty dead on for like an actual green, fresh, like vegetal flavor. I could actually see this uh, with cucumber too. I know that cucumber ends up making its way into some places that you wouldn't think in mixes. I think if you want your cucumber to actually taste like a real cucumber, I think the adding some of this would be fantastic. But I don't know. I'm kind of weird. I dig this. Yeah, it doesn't taste like burning marijuana at all. It does have some of that same character of like smelling a bag of good marijuana, but it doesn't really taste like combusting it at all, which I guess if you're a stoner who needs that flavor constantly, this is going to be a disappointment. But for, you know, the general weirdos who just want something on the herbal, like green, fresh side, I think this is a pretty good flavor. So I've already done the whole big rambling speech about who I think these flavors are for in the previous video. And thankfully this is the end of my stock of flavourart flavors named for emotions or whatever, or situations, as opposed to actual things that should have flavors. But all in all, actually fairly impressed with this batch. This batch was going to be the more challenging one. They're all a little bit darker. They have some tobacco notes. They're a little bit weirder, less of like bright summery flavors, but I enjoyed them immensely. So next video, fairly open. I still have a backlog of Reddit flavors to test, so I'm going to continue putting these out. But I've seen some of the comments about working on some specific topic issues like coconut or cereals and stuff, and so I'm going to go ahead and make an effort to, at least with the stock that I have in hand, which isn't too bad, I'll go ahead and just do some more of these like really quick rundowns and not focus so much on the full reviews, but just giving you like a quick rundown on my perspective on some of your various options in those categories. But anyway, thanks for watching me vape Reggae Night. I appreciate it. I'll catch you later.